Israel Folau, his future with the Wallabies kind of remains uncertain. To be fair, he's still got a hearing to be had. I think it's in May. So it's still not 100% clear what is going to happen with Israel Folau, but it does look like, at least from what Michael Cheika has been saying, that his days with the Wallabies are done. If that's true, do they have a guy who can replace him? There's been a fair bit of talk about this, at least in the Aussie media. Rod Cafer's come out and said that the Wallabies are actually stronger without him because they never figured out what his best position was, and they had to kind of work the team around him. They said his work ethic wasn't the best and all that kind of jazz. I don't know. I thought we'll have a look. We'll look at some of the potential replacements for Israel Folau. How do their numbers in Super Rugby thus far stack up? I did a similar thing with Ma'anonu. If you haven't seen that video, go check that out. It's a little trickier for the Folau question because you do have to ask yourself what position is Folau playing. Probably fullback, and who is going to replace him? There's these names that I've suggested: Jack Maddox, Reece Hodge, Kurtley Beale, Dane haylett-petty, and Tom Banks. But they all play a variety of positions. Tom Banks is probably the only one who's been playing specialist fullback all year, but he can play wing as well. Reece Hodge pretty much plays everywhere. Kurtley Beale spent most of his time this year at 12. haylett-petty, I think, has gone from wing and fullback, and Maddox has been primarily on the wing, although I think he's played one game at fullback as well. So it is a hard one to kind of rank based on the numbers, and that's all they are. They are numbers. Somebody said it's not baseball. It is true. It's not like a 1v1 situation. It's a team game. But let's have a look at the numbers and see who kind of gives you a replacement for what Folau gives you when he is playing for the Wallabies. So based on Super Rugby stats for this year, if we have a look at kind of attacking skills, now it should be said that all these guys have played a different number of games. Hodge is at 8, so is Maddox, Beale's at 7, Folau's at 7, Banks is at 9, and Dane haylett-petty's been injured, so he's only at 4. But what I've done is looked at their average minutes per game. They're all at different average minutes. Folau's the only guy averaging 80 minutes a game. But I've adjusted all their numbers as if they were playing 80 minutes a game. So it doesn't matter that Dane haylett-petty's only played 4 games. It's just his sample size is smaller. In terms of all the averages, I've evened them all out. I spent a little bit more time on the stats this time. So they're all even. So if they were averaging kind of like 33 run meters and they were doing like 78 minutes per game, it's gone up a little bit as if they played 80 just to kind of compensate. So should be an even playing field. Let's have a look at attack. And for attack, I'm looking at things like tries. How many runs did they make? How many meters did they get? Line breaks, tackle busts, and how many times did they get their hands on the pill? Because that's a factor as well. Your main guys here, in terms of kind of attacking flair, it kind of comes as no surprise that Israel Folau is pretty much your best guy at that. He averages 3.4 tackle busts a game, which is higher than anybody else I've got on the board. Tom Banks is a close second for that. In terms of run meters, he is 96 run meters, Israel Folau. Nobody gets close to him. The next, again, is Tom Banks at 62. The weakest for that is Kurtley Beale. Sorry, no, it's not. It's Reece Hodge at 33. And in terms of number of tries, it's actually Jack Maddox and Reece Hodge that get the go-ahead there. They're scoring at a higher rate than what Izzy Folau scores at. So those guys are averaging a try a game, whereas Israel's kind of every other game, despite the fact that he became the top try scorer for Super Rugby ever just recently. So I guess if you look at that, and I've watched enough Rebels games this season to know that often, at least with Maddox, not taking anything away from Maddox because I do like him, but he is often the beneficiary of some pretty sweet Guinea and Cooper play. So there's been a few tries where he's been pretty much the guy on the wing who just dots it down. So I guess we kind of take that into a bit of consideration as well. But I suppose overall, when I combine all the numbers, attack, like Israel Folau, oh, that pen is dying. He gets a big tick. Let's change colour. Izzy gets a big tick. And, I mean, overall, when you look at kind of the other guys, Beal actually pulled pretty decent numbers. He's got 51 run meters, pretty much a line break every game, even though Folau kills that as well. He gets a decent number of tackle busts. And actually, if you average it out, it does even out a wee bit, because Israel Folau does get more ball in his hand than most of the other guys. So he averages 17 possessions a game, whereas like Maddox only gets the ball 9 times. Beal, because he's been at 12, gets the ball 26 times. So yeah, I mean, I suppose we could have Banks on here as well. I mean, if you've seen him, the guy is electric, and his numbers overall, he's the only one who can kind of keep up with Folau in some areas too. Maddox, although he gets the tries, he kind of ranks down there a wee bit for everything else. Run meters, he's not that hot. Hodge is the same, and Dane haylett-petty, yeah, like he hasn't had any line breaks thus far in the 4 games that he has played. So yeah, kind of a mixed bag. If we look at distribution, it kind of does become a slightly different story. Your number one guy for distribution, funnily enough, is Kurtley Beale. But remember, he's been playing at 12, so that's kind of been a large part of what he does. And he's not a Ngāti Laumapi 12, he is a Kurtley Beale 12. So distribution is kind of the name of his game. So distribution, I'm looking at things like passes, offloads, try assists, line break assists. Also, I looked at kicks and kick meters, because it is often pretty important that your fullback can kick the ball. So Beale, he makes more kicks than anybody else per game. He gets the most kick meters because he makes the most kicks. He's the number one guy for line break assists, and for passes, of course, because he's in the position he's in most of the time. Where Israel Folau comes in is, and he gets a tick too, is offloads, because that's kind of what he does, and he is night and day above everybody else again. So Folau almost averages 3 offloads a game. Everybody else is not even at 1. Dane haylett-petty is your next closest with 0.8, so almost an offload every other game. In terms of try assists, Israel Folau is also doubly better than anybody else. He gets a try assist every other game, whereas like Beale and Dane haylett-petty are kind of every 3 games. Line break assists, it's actually Beale for that one, along with Dane haylett-petty, so that's an interesting one, whereas Folau is a bit less than them. Banks is pretty much at 0 for that. Same with try assists, Banks is at 0, so Banks is your attacking man, but not perhaps your assisting guy. But where Folau, I guess, does suffer, and it's kind of no secret that it's not been the strongest part of his game, is his kicking. He only kicks about once a game, and he gets 30-odd meters from his kicks. Everybody else, like Reece Hodge, has got a bigger boot than that. Kurtley Beale kicks a lot better. So does Dane haylett-petty. So for distribution, your main guys are actually Folau, Dane haylett-petty, and Kurtley Beale. Interestingly, Reece Hodge didn't fare all that well when you look at all the stats overall for distribution. And last one I'm going to look at for these first 3, which are just kind of clumps of stats together, is reliability. So I'm looking at their tackling, their missed tackles, and it's kind of a few negative stats. Their penalties conceded, their handling errors, and their kicking errors. So who's going to cost you, and who is, as a coach, I guess, reliable? When I did this for the Ma'anono video, like, you looked at Crotty, and he just has amazing consistency, but he's not a game breaker, whereas a guy like Laumapi just tears it up in terms of his individual handling, but he's not the best distributor, so it is a bit of a mixed bag. So in terms of your reliability, your number one guy for most things is actually Reece Hodge, because he does have a relatively poor handling error stat, but for most of the stuff that he does, He doesn't make a lot of kicking errors. He doesn't concede the most penalties, and he doesn't miss that many tackles. His tackling stats are actually pretty solid. Your other guys for reliability are Dane Haylett-Petty, which is kind of not surprising as well because he's a bit of a workhorse player. So he, in terms of his handling, he's a very good guy, and likewise he doesn't make any kicking errors apparently. His main kind of drawback is he's the highest guy for penalties that he's conceded. And perhaps your third best for reliability kind of seems counterintuitive, but it's Kurtley Beale. Overall, his numbers are not too bad. With Folau has a bit of drawbacks in this regard is his handling errors. So he's averaging almost 2 handling errors a game, whereas the next highest is actually Hodge and Beale at 1.2, but he's here 1.9, so a lot higher. Banks is 0.4, Dane Haylett-Petty is 0.5, Maddox is 0.5, so actually fairly reliable. Dane Haylett-Petty's main thing is he doesn't miss many tackles, likewise with Hodge. Folau only misses a tackle every third game, but the guy does not make a lot of tackles. So that kind of comes back to defense. So for defense, I've focused only on 2 stats. It's part of reliability as well. You like you guys to be reliable on defense, is also reliable with the ball. But looking solely at defense, unfortunately, there's not really a stat that you can use to measure positioning. But in terms of their tackling percentage, plus their tackling numbers, your number one guys for this are Reece Hodge, because he makes an average of 6.5 tackles per game, and his tackling chance of missed tackle is 19%. So 1 in 5 is going to get through him, but he's going to make 6 or 7 a game. The other guys for that are your main one is Dane Haylett-Petty. He makes 5.7 tackles a game, which is again a pretty good number for a guy usually playing at the back, and he only misses 13% of his tackles, so also pretty reliable. Guys who suffer here a wee bit are the others for different reasons. Jack Maddox, chance of missed tackle 45%. So it's almost 50-50 whether he's going to miss a tackle. Tom Banks is not that much better. His chance of missed tackle is 38% this season. Israel Folau is pretty good, actually. It's 16% chance of missed tackle, but he makes 1.6 tackles a game. So he's not... Maybe that's a positioning stat. He's not putting himself in a position to make that many tackles. Beale, I mean, he kind of gets a fair bit of grief for his defensive efforts. He's in the middle. He makes 4 tackles a game. If he's playing 12, that's probably pretty low. And he misses 32%. So I can't really give anyone else kind of a tick in that regard. And the last one, people talk to my man on videos like, how do you measure X Factor? X Factor can't be measured. Well, I've had a go at measuring X Factor. And what I've done is I've looked at how many times these guys got the ball. So how many possessions did they have? And of those possessions, how many times did something happen? So how many times did they get a possession and there was a tackle bust, or a line break, or a try assist, or a line break assist? So something fortuitous for their team, how often is that likely to happen? So that's my way of at least attempting to measure X Factor. And yeah, it kind of makes sense that Folau's you go for that. For every time he touches the ball, there's a 38% chance that something good is going to happen. Be it a tackle bust, a line break assist, try assist, whatever it is, something good is going to happen when he touches the ball. Interestingly, Maddox is also a guy here. I mean, part of that is the fact that he averages a try a game, but he does have some pretty good numbers in terms of his, I believe it was tackle busts. Yeah, he's averaging one of those a game. And also, I guess, because he only has 9 possessions, it's easier for him to get higher numbers. Because, like, Folau has 17 possessions a game, so he has to do more. Maddox out on the wing. when he gets the ball, something's more likely to happen, but he doesn't get the ball as much. So you kind of got to take that into a bit of context. And your third guy for that is Banks. Overall, his success rate's 31%. So almost 1 in 3 times that guy gets the ball, something good is going to happen for the team. The lowest for that was actually Kurtley Beale at 12%, but again, it's partly due to the fact that he's playing at 12, and a lot of the time he's probably just shoveling the ball on, and nothing in particular is going on. So Hodge 25%, Dane Haylett-Petty 22%. So yeah, it is an interesting kind of mix of characters. You got Dane Haylett-Petty, who's defensively reliable with the ball in hand, and a pretty decent distributor. Beale, he doesn't have that much X factor, which is kind of, again, counterintuitive because we know he can. He's fairly reliable. I would say, just without any stats to back it up, his work under the high ball is not the best. So that area, if you're a fullback, is probably not that reliable. Hodge, despite the fact that he scores a decent amount of tries, isn't able to create as much with the ball. Maddox, I may have been a bit hard on him in this, but yeah, part of it is because of the fact that he plays for the Rebels and is the end point for a lot of stuff. I think he would probably be a long shot for Folau's replacement at 15 anyway. Banks was my initial thought for a kind of like replacement, and he does kind of draw parallels in terms of his attacking skills, but perhaps doesn't have that same distribution that Folau has. So yeah, it is an interesting question. We're still not sure whether Folau will end up playing for the Wallabies. It seems like no at this point. We're sitting here in April, but it is one to watch. The sample size is not that great. It's between 4 and 9 games. Remember, a Super Rugby season for the regular season is 16 games, so it's around about half a season of play. Even if it seems single-digit numbers is not that high, it's a decent amount. But of course, it is a team game. These guys play different positions, so the numbers aren't everything. But I think it does kind of give a bit of a fair indication of where things are. When I summarized all these numbers, so ignoring everything you see on the board, for the overall best numbers, your top guys are Folau, Dane Haylett-Petty, and Beale. They're all much of a muchness. Folau, Dane Haylett-Petty, and Beale. Slightly behind them is Tom Banks. Again, it's his kind of distribution that lets him down a bit. Hodge is back a bit further, and then Maddox is back a bit further still. So, I don't know. If you guys are picking a Wallabies team today, are you going with Beale for his kind of experience at fullback with the Wallabies? You could equally say the same with Dane Haylett-Petty. You're looking for Banks' attacking flair. Are you thinking Maddox can make the step up? Hodge, with that big boot of his and his ability to cover pretty much everywhere else in the back line? I don't know. And there are other guys as well. Hamish Stewart has been playing fullback for the Rebels. Not the Rebels, the Reds. There are other choices. These are just guys who have been in gold before, so I thought we'd have a look. But yeah, it was an interesting one. Folau is definitely a hard guy to replace. Some of the stuff he does cannot be measured in stats. His ability under the high ball is immeasurable. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts on this, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.